Oh, ah, so, uh-oh. Cheers.
Was the military advisory, military assistance command Vietnam, a command, not just an advisory position. So MACV comes in, and the guy, General Carter, not General Carter, who is it? No, I forget the name of the guy, um, who is assigned, not McGar. Maybe I'll think of his name in a minute. So whoever it was that he sent as the MACV commander was actually Taylor's choice, and he was Taylor's protege. So in effect, Taylor is still running Vietnam because the new MACV commander is his guy. So after all the trouble we went through with the trip there and getting him smacked down by JFK, he's still pretty much in control of what's going on in Vietnam. So we go through 62. There's a huge order of battle thing going on that I describe in JFK in Vietnam, where all the forces, the Viet Cong forces, are cut in not just in half, but 60% are eliminated after a big study is done. And all the true story of what's going on in Vietnam is not given to Kennedy. The false story he's given is that there's not that many troops. And the truth is that there's a lot of them. Now, what Kennedy had decided to do, there's three options in Vietnam. We get out completely. We invade with troops. Those are off the table. What's on the table for Kennedy is an advisory effort. But when those numbers were discovered, how many Viet Cong were there, the advisory effort was dead on arrival. So they had to hide it from Kennedy. But guess who knew all about it? The vice president got all the true reporting, and the president got all the false reporting. And I know about it because the guy who was actually managing Lyndon Johnson, who was the vice president at the time, Howard Burris was his name. And he took me to several places. I met with him 15, 20 times over a course of years, and he told me the whole story. He told me that whole story. He didn't tell me some stories that I figured out later, but he knew that he had to give me something. And that was a big deal. Nobody had heard about the order of battle deception that had taken place in the spring of 62. Anyway, I don't want to spend too much time there, but that's a big deal that had never been put out before, and it is. And in Army books on the war, they have to use that now because it's true. And I was able to interview all the people that were involved in it. So, so things continue to worsen all through the year. Kennedy's busy with Cuban Missile Crisis and a few other things on the planet. You know that it's not all about Vietnam at that time. And so by the end of the year, Kennedy starts sending people over there and sees that he's being lied to. And so what's happening is that Kennedy starts making a plan to get out of Vietnam. And at the time, Kennedy is allowing somebody else, not Taylor, to be his advisor, and that's going to be McNamara. He got so sick and tired of being asked to send combat troops that he blew up at the end of 1961, early 62, when they put MACV together, and he brought in a lot of people he fired, including Dulles and others that he fired, and the replacements into one room. And he walks in, and it was short and sweet. He said, "Look here. You either get with my program or you get out. And I want, who is it? Who's going to carry out my policy in Vietnam? Who's it going to be?" And McNamara, the defense secretary, puts up his hand and said, "I will, boss. Me and L." That means Lemnitzer. But anyway, so there were Secretary of Defense conferences for the rest of the 2 years, regularly. McNamara would go out and come back, and he would go at different times. But anyway, they fed him all the bad informations so that Kennedy wouldn't know. So they used McNamara as the vehicle, while Burris made sure that Johnson got all the true order of battle stuff in Vietnam. Anyway, I've got to hurry up here because what happens is Kennedy figures it out, and they know he's figured it out. And he knows that they know he's figured it out. So they're kind of like in a game of chicken as we move into 63. Now, at this time, we move into a situation where something is got to give. And in these SecDef conferences that take place in the spring, there's a lot. By the way, there's a lot of big Viet Cong strikes and stuff that are just getting in the news and
Right.
things like that. But as we move into the spring of 1963, at one of these SecDef conferences, there's a general there by the name of Krulak. He ends up being he's a Marine general. He ends up being there with I forgot to mention, I guess. When I think I did, you tell me if I didn't, that when Lemnitzer was sent to SACEUR, Taylor gets the job as chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
Right. Yeah, you said that.
Okay. So Taylor's now in charge of Vietnam. All right. And the guy he works with is General Krulak. Now, they made a plan called Commander-in-Chief Pacific Operational Plan 34 Alpha. What that was a plan to invade Vietnam, and everything from pinpricks all the way up to invasion and all kinds, nuclear warfare, everything. It was a total plan to to win a war in Vietnam. And this is
when also around the time DARPA was created, and they created a bunch of different things, the chemical warfare that they were.
That's going to come. That's going to come after Kennedy's death. Okay.
Okay. Oh, okay.
That's when we send 500,000 troops over there. No, that all we had was advisors. We weren't doing the defoliants and stuff during Kennedy. Now there were some aircraft that were being flown, that were supposed to be flown by Vietnamese, and they weren't. They just had some cooks in the back seat. And so there was technically breaking some of Kennedy's rules. So there were some things that were over the line, but nothing like what you saw in Vietnam.
So we just kind of got into the weeds with everything that was going on with the SecDef meetings, the Secretary of Defense.
We were on 1963.
1963
in the spring, and that's when they started to come up with a plan to invade Vietnam and to be ready to do that. It was called Op Plan 34A. That's the short version. It's also a Commander-in-Chief Pacific designator on that, but we don't need to talk about that. It's just that that's what they were doing. And what happened was Taylor and Krulak didn't want. What they did was they suppressed it. They didn't let that go back. As the contents and conclusions of a SecDef conference are supposed to go to McNamara and Kennedy.
Right.
Well, they suppressed this because it's war in Vietnam. And at the same time, the first one of these Buddhists sits in the middle of a street intersection, douses himself in gasoline and lights himself and kills himself. He's only the first of many. And in Kennedy, he just gets completely upset. Why is this happening? How come we didn't know this? Anyway, it was symptomatic of the whole political bottom falling out in Vietnam. There was no support for the regime, what was going on. The GM and his brother were very corrupt and kept mostly they wanted troops and even American forces there just to protect them, not to defeat the communists. They were just trying to stay in power themselves. So it was a mess. And so Kennedy realized that his plan was going to be to pull out after he was reelected. And that's basically all of the troops wouldn't be pulled out till 65. And he could say things like, it's their war, they have to win it. He did that. But then he would say stuff like, but we have to help them. So he said things that misled people into thinking and was used after his death by some books saying that he would have done what LBJ did, but there was no way that was true. He just didn't come straight with the American people because he was afraid, as he was on other things, African-American civil rights and things like that. They helped him get elected, and he didn't want to do anything until after he was reelected because he thought he would lose the Southern Democratic votes, which was the base of the South. So you have this situation now in 63 where everything's going wrong. And he realizes, and we need to talk about this too, because he will actually go on television and say things. He wants to taunt with the Russians, and he wants to really do civil rights, and he wants to pull out of Vietnam.
Didn't he have a direct line with Khrushchev at this point? Mm-hmm. Didn't he have a phone in his house and in the Oval Office?
I think in the Cuban Missile Crisis, it was where that happened. But the point is that what is he going to do? Right? He realizes that it's over in Vietnam, and he can't wait until another whole year and a half or something to do anything about this, because by that time it'll be too late to withdraw. There'll be no public support for it, and so what he decides to do is to accelerate the withdrawal plan. So the new plan is that he's going to pull out 100 advisors before the end of the year.
Okay.
And he draws his line in the sand. He says, I want real troops. I don't just want, onesies and twosies coming out and being replaced. I want to see, and helicopters too, So he wants a real withdrawal to start in 1963. And then after he gets reelected, then all the troops will come out. Now, this was kept secret for a while because he didn't know what his opponents were going to do to him about it, and what the American public would do, what the newspapers would do, and all that kind of stuff. So he kept it to himself, but he sent McNamara and Taylor out together at the end of September 1963. And their job was to do the same thing as back in 61. They were supposed to go over there and go visit all the hamlets and stuff and count their chickens and hens and whatnot, and come home and recommend that we begin the withdrawal from Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
And they did. Now, on the way back home, the stopover in Honolulu, the number 2 guy in the State Department, his name was Sullivan. There's a couple of Sullivans that running around, but he was one of them. Anyway, he said he got a hold of Taylor, and he said, we can't do this. We're not pulling troops out of Vietnam. We got to put more in. If this stays in the report, he says, I'm going to write a counter report. And so they said, okay, no problem. We'll take it out. So you don't see it in the draft of the report as it stood at Honolulu when they were on their way home. So they come home. It's first couple of days of October, and the helicopter lands in the garden there, and Taylor and McNamara walk into the White House and into the Oval Office, and they sit down with a report. And the report looks like it was at Honolulu. And there's all these press people in there. It's a press op and everything. And so after the press is out, before the conversation starts, McNamara and Taylor get up and say, just a minute. And they leave the room. They go into the next room and they put the withdrawal plan in the folder. And they come out and it's just fucking pandemonium. Excuse my French. For the rest of the day, there's people down in the basements that are saying this is crazy. Why are we doing this? It can't happen. And so it ends up being a fairly rigorous meeting that the Kennedy goes through and tells people that the decision's been made. And you can get out of here if you don't like it, but it's over. There's no argument anymore. This is what we're doing. Now, this isn't in the newspapers, but this is what happened. And all the people that were involved in this have written their stories, and it's in the books everywhere. What happened that day when they found out that Kennedy was proposing to start the withdrawal from Vietnam? He didn't want to put it in a national security action memorandum, which is what happens, when a new policy is going to be made. Mm-hmm. But of course, Taylor was on the wrong side. He told all of his buddies what was going on. So the buzz got all around. And so it got into the newspapers, that Kennedy was proposing a withdrawal from Vietnam. And so McGeorge Bundy, his national security advisor, who was a hawk, but was, I contend, loyal to Kennedy. I can explain why. But anyway, he says, look, Bush, if it's in the newspapers, we might as well put it in an ANSAM. And they did. So even though the decision was made and discussed on the 2nd of October, it wasn't until the 6th or the 7th of October that they actually cut NSAM 263, which was the withdrawal from Vietnam, and another part of it, which was an instruction to the station in Vietnam. And it didn't say what it was, but it was a coup against the Diem brothers. That was also in the ANSAM that day. And so this is October. So Kennedy is coming into the open, but what he does is he sends McNamara. He sends McNamara out onto the steps of the White House to explain this ANSAM. And he explains, so the reason he does that is to make it look like it's a recommendation of McNamara, but Kennedy hasn't decided yet. That way, if something goes this way or that way, right, he's not on the hook.
Okay.
And that's the way things are going. But everybody on the inside knows what the hell's going on here. Now, so now we have the Diem brothers are going to get murdered. Kennedy has this. You see this picture of his hand over his forehead. Oh my God! And so actually, that was another. He had to do that a couple of times. But in any event, they were at the point where it was going to happen, and so after what the Diem assassination really requires is another SecDef conference in order to come up with a new policy, because there's a regime change, right, in South Vietnam, mm-hmm. right? So now Secretary of Defense has to go talk to everybody, and everybody goes out to Honolulu for this one. And everybody, all the top guys send their guy who does, they're not reporters, they're they're publicity person.
Mhm.
Everybody who was anything in the hierarchy of the establishment sent. So there's a lot of press there as well. And it turns out that what happened that day was suppressed, except for the briefing book. You see, the date that it happened was 20 November 1963. This is 48 hours before the bullets are going to kill Kennedy. 48 hours before they're all out there in Honolulu. And there's McNamara, and Taylor's doing the briefing. It's a military briefing. And the briefing says, you know what? We've been wrong this whole time about winning the war. Actually, we're losing it. It's the first time that the optimistic interlude that began in the beginning of 62 with the OB reporting is now over. It starts back then and it ends 2 days before the president's murder. They tell the truth at this place. McGeorge Bundy, the national security advisor, he was there too. And there was a second NSAM that was made, not 263. This is in November now. This is at the very end. A new NSAM was created before that conference and for it by McGeorge Bundy. And what it said was, we need to intensify the war effort, but we will use South Vietnamese forces to do so. And McGeorge Bundy drafted that up. And that's the reason I believe that he was loyal to Kennedy, because if he thought Kennedy was going to die, he wouldn't have done that. He thought Kennedy would be awake to see that, because Kennedy could approve that NSAM. Well, guess what happened? It got changed right after, with hours after the assassination. And McGeorge Bundy had to take that and walk around Washington to get input into it. And there were a lot of happy to glads changes, but there was one paragraph which had restricted, the paragraph that restricted new intensification of the war to South Vietnamese forces was changed. And there were two big lines through it. It wasn't a happy to glads. There were two slashes in that whole paragraph.
Right.
So I got a hold of McGeorge Bundy and I said, I needed, to ask you about, the stuff you did out there. He said, I don't remember being there in Honolulu. And I said, oh, sir, I'm sorry to tell you, but your name's on a lot of the papers and things. And he said, look, do me a favor. Would you send them to me? And I said, sure. And I did. And he got a hold of me right away. He said, oh, yes, you're right. I remember now. A lot of people were very upset psychologically when the president was killed. Okay. Especially in the ones in his administration. It was kind of like, being in a new planet somewhere, they weren't ready for this. And I think a lot of them did suppress what they heard that day. But anyway, McGeorge Bundy was totally straight with me. He said, that was me. Yeah. And that was me. That was me walking that NSAM around to see if there were any changes. And I said, okay, well, let's go to page 3. Who, those your slash marks, through there? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, who told you to do that? And he said, LBJ. LBJ told me to do that. And the new language in the new NSAM 273 version 2, it was published that weekend while Kennedy's corpse is still laying in state in the rotunda, said there was no cap on it. It didn't rule. It didn't say Vietnamese forces. It was any forces you could want. So if you're a war planner looking at that paragraph, everything's on the table now. It's a reversal of Kennedy's from the very beginning, right. From Cuba in the beginning all the way to Vietnam. No right. Damn combat troops. And so that's the last chapters here in my book, JFK in Vietnam, where we write about how this happened. Now, so here's the bad news, I told you about Krulak and Upland 34A. What happened during the last 6 weeks of Kennedy's life was NSAM 63, the withdrawal plan, from that moment up to the time he was assassinated. General Taylor was actually working against Kennedy to gut the withdrawal plan behind McNamara's back, didn't tell McNamara what he was doing, gutting the withdrawal plan, and at the same time, standing up Plan 34A at the same time. Also, of course, behind McNamara's back and Kennedy's back.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you have to ask yourself a serious question there. Why would he be doing that? Why did he tell the truth only 24 hours before the president's death? So what I'm trying to tell you is that is the pièce de résistance of what I saw him do when he came back and gave Kennedy the thing he didn't want to hear back in 61,
Mm-hmm.
you know, with his combat troops under flood relief task force, all this stuff. He knew he had to know. He had to know what he was doing, and everything was ready. Everything was finally ready. Now, one thing I didn't mention that I now need to mention that dovetails with what is happening here in these 6 weeks is something that happened after the Bay of Pigs, and actually just around the time that Taylor was brought in to the investigation group of the Bay of Pigs. Okay. There is a subcommittee of the National Security Council called the NES, it's the Net Evaluation Subcommittee of the National Security Council, and it's all military guys, and including but one, the head of the CIA, Allen Dulles. And they do something called a PSYOP. I think I told you at dinner last night. I can say what that is: Strategic Integrated Operation for Nuclear Warfare.
Not a psychological operation. The other kind of PSYOP.
Yeah.
Okay. So what?
It's a plan for nuclear warfare that is briefed to the president every year for the next fiscal year.
Okay.
It's a prediction.
Okay.
And Eisenhower was the first one to get one. And this is when, he's increasing nuclear weapons to save money. But he sees, they tell him what's going to happen. Even though we have a lot of weapons and all that, he was absolutely stunned. Eisenhower was president when he saw how many American casualties and casualties around the world were going to be.
Right.
And so he did not want to do that, and he would never have done that. But in any event, that was the first PSYOP. And then Kennedy becomes president. And so in the beginning, or the end, or not the beginning, the middle of the first year was in 61. And instead of giving him the PSYOP for 62, they did something different. And of course, the background is what happened at the Bay of Pigs and everything. And Kennedy had to go on TV and say it was my mistake, and he did. He took responsibility. He was kind of at his nadir because Khrushchev was kicking his ass in Vienna, saying terrible things about war. And so the Vienna conference didn't go good, and the Bay of Pigs hadn't gone good. This was at kind of a low point for Kennedy. And so they sit down and they brief him on not the 62 PSYOP, but a PSYOP for the fall of 1963. And so what they do is they tell the president that that's a special time, that we could, and they were recommending a surprise total nuclear attack against Russia, China, all that stuff in the fall of 1963, because that was the opportune moment before the Soviet Union would have to start bringing online ICBMs, and we would be at our maximum power and a maximum advantage on both sides when you compare the nuclear power. That's what they briefed him on. So he gets up and he says, I don't want to hear any of this kind of talk again. And he's walking through the door on his way. You hear him say, and we call ourselves the human race. That was his reaction to the PSYOP that they were talking about. There were other PSYOPs along the way, but that was here's the importance of that. And what I'm interested in is knowing who all was there.
When did this meeting take place again?
July 1961.
Okay. The plan was for 63 in the fall.
Yeah. The fall of 63 to do this surprise, spasmodic, throw everything in the kitchen sink all at once. Now, the point I want to make here is that idea wasn't dead in the fall of 63. We have what I just told you shows you it was alive and well in 1963.
Right.
Okay. NSAM 263 and the first version of 273 were being replaced, by a PSYOP. Now, the question is, how many people in the CIA knew about this? Because we've got a whole new Oswald thing unfolding at this time, all through the summer of 63, and in the fall when he ends up out there in Mexico City, and we have another records,
Can we jump to him real quick and explain what was going down with Oswald in 63?
Well, Oswald is on his way. He's got you don't actually need a visa to get into Mexico, but you get in line and you get a piece of paper.
How long had he been back in the U.S. from Russia?
He got off the boat in the 2nd of June, 1962, when everything was a mess in the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Right.
Now we are in 1963. He's been there the whole year establishing his Castro legend. It starts in January when he puts a placard around his neck. It says Viva Fidel.
Right.
That's when you know it's game on, because he's already been a commie in the Soviet Union. And now, he's going to wear the Castro badge as well. Remember Castro and the KGB and
right.
Oswald?
Yep.
Okay. So he, here we have him now in Mexico City. Now, his story when he gets there, and I know, and I have a reason to believe he was there, but he was also impersonated. That's another whole story that people want to talk about and argue about, but it's I think it's very simple. Anyway, what he is doing is he goes his first day to the Cuban consulate and says, I need a visa from you to go to Cuba, because I want to go through Cuba and go back to Moscow again. I want to go back there. And I'm redefect. He wanted to redefect. He told, this is the Cubans, that he wanted to redefect again to the communist side. He wanted to go over to Russia again. Now, and you have to understand that this is about the time of this is not even this is October. This is the first week of October.
Right.
Actually, the day that he went to the Cuban consulate, I think it was probably technically something like 30 September. And so,
didn't he meet with like the head of assassinations there?
Well, that's those Russians. I'm getting there.
Okay.
But he starts with the Cuban consulate. Now, what she says to him is, look, where's your Russian visa? We can't give you a transit visa for Cuba if you don't have, the Russian one.
Mm-hmm.
And besides which, you don't even have any pictures with you. So he has to go to a booth and take pictures of himself. And then he goes over to the Russian embassy. And yes, one of the consular officials, one of the two consular officials, is Valery Kostakov. They're all consular officials. He just so happens to be the KGB head of assassinations in the Western Hemisphere division. And that was what he was supposed to be doing. They wanted to make sure that he has contact with Kostakov.
Who told him to do this stuff?
Who told him to do the stuff in the first place to go over to Moscow? His handlers. He had handlers who told that you need to get the story first, and then we can like maybe draw straws as to who and how many people. Very few people are in on this, and this is not Sully. This is not
Sully.
No, this is another, but it's the same thing. They learned about it. They understood what happened. Whoever was behind it. And just let me play this out with you. So what happens is the Cuban, excuse me, the Russians, Soviets tell him, look, you're an American. We can't give you a visa here. The only place you can get a visa from is your embassy in the United States in Washington. So I'm sorry. So then he goes back to Sylvia Duran, and the Cuban consulate, and says, yeah, they agreed to give me my visa.
Right.
She said, really? She talks to Kostakov every day because she picks up the phone, calls Kostakov and says, I got this guy here, says you did. And then he's, no, that didn't happen. He's a kooky guy, And so she said, nah, you're busted. We're not doing that.
Okay.
And so he's out of bullets for that Friday. So he goes back on Saturday and tries again with the Russians. And all of this is reality, this part of it. So he really has no business going there because the embassies and consulates are closed on Saturdays. Well, it just turns out that on Saturday mornings, the Russian consulate guys have a volleyball game. And so they're all there showing up in their shorts and stuff. And the guard says, buzzes them and says, there's this guy Oswald out here wants to talk to you. And says, well, they let him in. And so they go through it again. And he puts a revolver on the table and says, "See what the FBI does to me? They won't help me." So he's saying he wants to go back to Russia so bad, and he can't get any help, from Americans. And he, what? Oh, what was me? What can I do? So they said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to send a message to Washington that you need to fill out to request a visa. And then they can send it to you here from Washington. How about that? He just pushes the paperwork away and walks out. That is the end of reality. Now it becomes Hollywood, what I want to say, fun and games. Phone calls start to be made. And it's somebody calls up and starts asking for documentation, and says, how has the reply come back yet from Washington for me? Now, the problem with that is there was nothing sent to Washington in the first place. Oswald didn't fill it out and didn't care.
Right.
So you have to understand how that's possible. And so there's a lot of people who just swear that there was an imposter there, not Oswald.
Calling and asking about it.
Yeah, just basically Oswald didn't go there. There was an imposter that went down there.
Oh, okay.
So no, I have something better, because I had, when I wrote whatever book we're talking about here, the CIA was able to actually interview the Russians and the Cubans that were there. They agreed to go to do a deposition of everything they remembered that happened in their consulate, if it was Cuba, the embassy, if it was Russian. And the fact of the matter is that it was obvious whoever was on the phone, there was more phone calls that were made. There was 3 of them. But at every point, it didn't jibe with what we know happened inside the consulate and the embassy. So that gave me the clue that, and actually the answer. Oswald failed in his job to get the visas. He wasn't really going to go anywhere, but the CIA had a lot of Cubana airline pilots that were on the take that as long as he got the visa, they could say he had been in Cuba. And there was already stuff in the mail coming from a guy in Cuba saying, "Hi, Lee, it was great seeing you here," and all that. So all this stuff was in motion, right? And of course, he never got the visa, so he was in trouble. They sent him there to tie himself to Castro, and again to remind everybody that he was KGB too, right? That's what he did. Now I have to tell you, here we have, we're just weeks away from the motorcade, and the first thing that the FBI has to do for a motorcade is to know everybody who works on that trip, not a trip,
route.
On the route, exactly. And anybody who is even questionable is removed physically from that route, or the route is changed. And so that's why Oswald wasn't taken off the parade route. Everything was suppressed. Everything he did down there was put in a different place until after the shots were fired.
Everything that he did in Mexico, meeting at the consulate and the embassy, all those documents.
The whole year, the whole shebang of playing, you know, that what he did in Dallas, in New Orleans, and again, then in New Orleans, then back in Dallas again. None of that stuff made it into his 201 file.
Why?
Because he would have been moved from the parade route.
Who made it so that those files were not available to anybody?
Good question. Good question. We know where they were filed. I think I brought, I don't know, I have these cover sheets where it shows that who read this file to that file, and it's very clear that they were not. He already had a 201 file. It was opened in 1962. Too late for a lot of reasons, but that's not the point here. His 201 file had been opened for a long time.
Right.
And all the stuff he did in 1963 didn't go into it. It was hidden in another place. It's just like Sully having all the documents coming from all the other government agencies being hidden at his desk, so nobody could know what happened except for him.
Mm.
So the same thing was going on. Only this time the documents were sent to a place called the SAS, and it's basically that's the Cuban affairs staff. It's a huge staff now because of the Cuban problem. And there's a guy by the name of Desmond Fitzgerald who has to know. He's the head of SAS and probably his deputy, but nobody else really knows that all these Hoover letterhead memorandums about everything Oswald was doing in New Orleans and stuff were not put into 201 file. So then you have a situation while Oswald is down there in Mexico City, Win Scott, who is the head of the CIA station, has to ask a question, because they don't know who he is. So they send a cable to headquarters. Who is a guy named, using the name Lee Harvey Oswald, walking all around here? Who is he? What do you know about him? Now, the guy who was in charge of the Mexico City desk, his name was John Whitten. And the only thing they gave him to answer when Scott was down there in Mexico City was the 201 file. They said, "Oh, well, hell, the latest information we have is May 62. Oswald was still in the Soviet Union then. All his entire life had been expunged for the purposes of the communication going between headquarters and Mexico City." So the lights didn't blink red in the CIA. Now, over at the FBI, at the same time, somebody took Oswald off the espionage list, which started when he went to Moscow back in 1959.
Right.
Nobody could put anything in the Oswald file or read anything in the Oswald file without getting permission from the espionage section of the FBI the whole time, until, while all the lights are turned off in the CIA, the same thing happens in the FBI. He's taken off the espionage list. So he's not on there for the cruise that's supposed to remove people on the route. of the motorcade.
Who could have done something like that?
How you doing, pause?
Somebody who is very powerful, who's basically saying, you're going to do this. Now,
How powerful?
well, you have to have somebody pretty high in the.
I don't know why I'm so obsessed with this case. I'm a fucking Canadian. What the hell do I care what you guys do to your president? But I mean, it's fucked up that they killed their own president. Obviously not anybody here, but that yeah, they were capable of just fucking taking them. I don't know. I believe in America. To hear that somebody got away. Somebody close to him got away with killing him. Oh, that's fucked. I like to play Lee Harvey Oswald in video games a lot. Any video game where I can beat Lee Harvey Oswald, I play it. There's been one so far. It'd be great. I also like to play a game where we get to kill Kennedy. Not Kennedy. Lincoln. There should be a game out there that's like all the assassinations. You need to commit to the future with it, like fly those drones around. They're just flying around Russia right now. Ha! That'd be so fucked up. Having to like keep your ear open for drones. Oh my god. Okay, I'll shut up. We're gonna go back to this.
CIA to do it. This is a CIA.
It has to be CIA.
Well, the 201 file part, not the FBI part.
Right.
There's a lot of people that I could guess at, but it's not important right now. I'm working on this, and this is why I don't write my book yet, because I have plenty of time. But I'm very close to answering these exact questions now, and it's not just the CIA. It's the military who are actually taking Kennedy's plan and shit-canning it and replacing it with an invasion plan. You have to understand that's going on at the same time as this files caper.
Right,
okay.
Right.
So there's military people involved. There's got to be somebody in the CIA who is a fireman. So what they're doing is they've created the true story of everything Oswald did is going to blow up like a virus that's going to balloon big time as soon as the shots ring out.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for me, rather than try and identify every single human being, I want to know the nexus of the people in charge of this operation. And then we can work it down from there. Without understanding who's running the show, it's pretty difficult to say, okay, well, it has to be this guy or this guy. Clearly, John Whitten at the Mexico desk, that element was not involved.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they hadn't seen it. Now we have the records now, by the way. The same sheets, routing and record sheets, when you sign another government agency document in the CIA, it comes in with the document, but you have a routing sheet on the front, and everybody who reads it has to put their initials and the date that they saw it. And so down at the bottom, it shows the file where it was filed. And everything should have been filed in this 201, but it isn't. It's 100-300-11. That's the FPCC file over in SAS. And then later, there's a line through it that was put through it after the Kennedy assassination. A line through it and put his 201 number in there. You see the two numbers on all these. Now, this House Select Committee asked for those routing and record sheets. They wanted to see them. And you know what happened? The CIA said, no, you can't have them. And this is our elected officials. So it was in 2017, 2018. And I even had another chance. There was another few boxes that my friend Jay Harvey and I found some years before that, when there was 5 brown boxes of stuff that was put up before the big release in 2017, 2018. It was during the ARRB. There was a small 5 boxes of stuff. And there were some of those routing sheets there with a lot of blackouts. But anyway, I got a hold of them later on, and it was just it's devastating stuff. So what you have here is stuff going on involving, again, like I say, you've got a military, I think a military coup, and they have their things that they have to do. But then you have, before the assassination itself happening, what you have to do is have a plan for the cover-up. And that can't be made. You can't decide what your cover is going to be after the shooting. It doesn't work that way. Right. It requires careful coordination and control of who knows it. So we're talking about military and civilian, CIA, some people. So where am I starting my investigation for this? I want to go back to where the idea started. The idea started in July 1961, where the perfect time to do this big attack would be the fall of 1963. And Kennedy had said no over and over and over again. So who was there? Who was there? And I got the list of names of the people that were sitting there. And the name that popped out right away is a guy who just came on board for Kennedy. His name was Maxwell Taylor. He sat there and watched. And he was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff in the fall of 1963, putting in the plan that Kennedy didn't want and the one that the chiefs had wanted back in 1961. I want to not go too much farther in some of these things. You were right about one thing. There's a few things I'm still working on that I don't actually want to put on the table, but that's where I'm going. I'm looking very carefully at who could have been in both places or could have had access to somebody in the CIA or the military who was then involved or in a position to do these types of things and hide things.
Bad kitty.
There was another defector who said that there was former U.S. presidents that were aware of the plan to assassinate Kennedy.
This is the story about the true Oswald story in Minsk. So we had a lot of investigations, the Warren Commission, and then the Senate, and then the House of Representatives. That was all over by the 70s. But defections were still going on. And a KGB defector came over to the CIA in 1981. Okay, his name was Sergei Papushin. Took me a while to figure that out. It was the CIA tried to make it hard because they were told not to reveal the guy's name, but I have my ways of figuring things out, and a newspaper article and a few other things allowed me to put it together. Mm-hmm. So he told us the story. Actually, there was a story about him from another guy. Juralev was his name, I guess. And he said that there were 2 conspirators with Oswald, 2 American presidents that had conspired with Oswald to kill President Kennedy. Now, the problem with that was that, the previous presidents, there was only Truman and Eisenhower because Kennedy was dead and everybody else before him was dead. So whoever 2 presidents was, those were the only 2 presidents it could be.
Right.
And that's crazy. And so, and it was almost just throw it in the trash can, except for there was another couple of lines in this thing that mentioned, but there was a guy who defected who was bona fide, and his name was Sergei Papushin. So then this crazy memo of this guy. He walked in, we think maybe in Canada, to get a CIA guy to tell this story to. There was a throwaway sentence at the bottom, and the ARB got it and looked at it, and it was a little guy who really was nondescript. I don't even remember his name. He wasn't in the hierarchy of it. And so it went all the way up to the top. And then they asked the CIA about it. Well, the CIA actually, and you have to understand, by this point, it's 1998. Okay. That's when the ARB is the last weeks, 1998, when they put the story together. They figure out they get his CIA cryptonym, IJ Decanter, and they get the FBI pseudonym, Flash Run, and I get all this stuff on those things, and they're the same guy. I can see that. And so you can put this guy's personality together, and there's the ball game. There were a lot of episodes in his history before he died, allegedly suicide by 1/5 of liquor, and under his bed. He dies after doing that, and that's not very convincing.
And it was right after his handlers came to visit him, right?
Yep, that's right. But in any event, the CIA forked over all this stuff, asked for the review board to not to mention the name and not to do this or that, but they sent the whole big bunch of stuff that I used, interviews, tapes that you could hear talking, all this stuff they sent. So we have plenty of stuff to work with, even the stuff that was released, and the newspaper article was very helpful because it had the story. Somebody had the story, but not the name. And I put the story together with the other stuff I had, and it was easy to figure out his whole history. So, but anyway, what he also told us led to the Oswald story in Minsk, because this guy had personal contact and knew those he had visited the KGB school there later, and some of those teachers were still around, and they told him what they had talked to Oswald and everything. So this came out. His defection was 1981, but it wasn't until much later that all these pieces came together, just before the ARRB closed shop. So there were a lot of FBI files that were not collated with the CIA files and so on. So it took a number of years for all this to happen. But it was easy. It was just so easy because I had all the information, and you can look at the chapter yourself. You decide whether you like it or not. And if you don't like it, that's your prerogative. Right. But it is one of these things that has multiple independent attestation, and there's nothing you can do about it. The FBI files, the CIA files, everything fished together. This guy was for real. He was bona fide, but eventually something happened. They didn't like something he was doing, and we have precious time now. We don't have to worry about that. But that's how I put that chapter together. Okay. And how it was the last act of the ARB that was sitting wide in the open all this time. And I finally decided to use it. I hadn't used it in any of my books. And then I decided, because we were talking about, Oswald over in Russia, I thought, well, it's time to put that in the book. Right. So chapter 3 is, Oswald in Minsk. Now, the interesting thing is the guy who's written the most about this, his name is Titovitz. The people read his book. He was there. He knew Oswald. He was a friend of Oswald's. He didn't say anything about any of this. We're not really sure why, that he wouldn't know any.
Is this the guy who was a roommate with him?
No, he wasn't a roommate, but he was a friend.
Okay. And what was the significance of the 2 letters that he wrote back to CIA when he was trying to get back? There's one that apparently never got there.
Yeah. So it's important for a couple of reasons. What it does, what happened with the 2 letters actually allows us to see that there was a CIA penetration that was trying to be covered up. And it looks like the House Select Committee actually cooperated. So Oswald wrote a letter in 1960. At the time that his 201 file was being opened, by the way. Anyway, and that's what triggered the 201 opening, was that he didn't ask to come home. The letter asked the American consulate to give him his passport back so that he could go back to the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And now what happens is then there's another letter in January that says, hello, this is Oswald again. You didn't answer my first letter that I sent asking to go back, whatever. So that's the first line in his second letter is, I sent you the first letter. And so when the House Select Committee gets this, they go along with the CIA to say there was no first letter. And they say everything that's in the second letter, but they leave the first line out where Oswald says, my first letter. The HSCA doesn't include that sentence. So that tells me that somebody asked them to help protect a sensitive source, which would be how in the hell what happened to that letter, that first letter.
Right.
And it was pinched by the KGB. And the problem is that later on, they didn't want anybody to know because that's when the 201 file was opened. And there was other people behind that. But anyway, I was able to put that story together and without knowing, which is something I found late enough to get it into, I believe, the Oswald and CIA book, which was 1995. And if not, then in another one of my books, I think by then I'd already figured it out. Because this is 95. Okay, so the CIA, the KGB falls apart by 91. It's all over. Not just the KGB, but the whole Soviet Union is gone.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was a honeymoon period where both sides were talking to each other. We gave them a lot of money to get rid of weapons of toxins and things and suitcase nukes and things like that. There was a lot of cooperation trying to get our arms around all the things that could be sold on the black market and things like that. But also for the media had a field day. They sending people over there and interviewing people. It was all okay for a while. Later on, Putin took care of everything. But anyway, the point is that ABC News got in there, and it was Ted Koppel at 11 o'clock p.m. I remember watching those shows back then. Anyway, they were given access to the Oswald files, and the letter was in there. There it was. Just as big as day. The letter was there. And so there was no doubting about that first letter. Oswald, and so here's the other thing it told us, though, because his diary didn't have it. And there's no way he wouldn't have put it in his diary. So there are a lot of things wrong with that diary that we think, and that diary was made after his death. We think they had a version. They had a version, but they made another version because there were other things they wanted to cover up. Some of the sources they may have had, sensitive sources. Who knows what all was behind it? But anyway, yeah, I told that story about the two letters.
Right.
And the first letter was sent at the time of the 201 opening in 1960. And they didn't want anybody to know about that. And so they used the State Department for some help and so on. Anyway, there's a lot more details to it, but it's a fun story to tell because we know that somebody actually found the first letter that.
What did the first letter say? Was there anything?
I would like to come back to Moscow and get my passport from you.
Oh, okay.
Because I'm planning to, and I need help. I need money. He asked for money too,
right,
to take his family back to the United States. Anyway, it took a couple of years, not 2 years, but a long time, 20 months before he actually got on the boat with his wife.
We were talking last night. You said there was basically three main reasons that we're so far behind. We're so far behind in analyzing everything that happened during the Cold War and everything that you're finding with Kennedy. And one of the big points was about Martin Luther King.
It is 2023 now. And still I'm writing books like this that have these big stories. And I get to the King story in a second, but that's just one of them. And all of this stuff was available back in 2017 and some of it even before then. But certainly by 2017, 2018, there are 6 million pieces of paper. Now, there are so many people who call themselves researchers who don't do research, but they do read other people's books. Now, it doesn't take very much research before we have a book that is going around the table from one guy to the next guy to the next guy to the next guy, and it never goes anyplace else. So we never make it very much progress if the vast majority of people who are getting into the Kennedy assassination are just reading other people's books and regurgitating the same stuff. So these are examples that, like, for example, this Oswald story we just told about in Minsk, that was there the whole time. The MLK story is a big one. And I broke that story in Memphis this year on the 55th anniversary of his assassination down there. And we had a meeting down there. We got put in a basement. They took away a good room from us and gave us another one because there was, I don't know why it happened. Anyway, it was very hot there. But anyway, I gave that presentation and it was brand new. And I mentioned some things that had never been mentioned before. The only thing I didn't give up was the name of the person that was working with the CIA for the CIA as a mole in Martin Luther King's inner circle. And I didn't mention the name of his case officer in the CIA. Originally, it had gone back all the way to basically in the 1930s, even before World War II. Initially, there were a lot of communist parties in the West that were basically communist parties only because they were anti-fascists. So the communists were part of that. They were against fascism. And before World War, along the run up to World War II, there was a pact that Stalin and Hitler made together, the Nazi-Soviet pact. And this allowed the Russians to go off to do their thing in the Far East with the nationalists and versus the communists over there, and gave Hitler plenty of room to go take Europe. But the moment that thing was public, the people were the communist parties in the West were running for cover. They all left the communist parties because of the Nazi-Soviet pact, because of Hitler. And so there was this one guy who was an opportunist. He was a high school dropout. And he had joined the Communist Party too. And he liked money and he liked to get his hands on it. Anyway, he ended up being high up in the whole monetary structure of the Communist Party and the American Communist Party, and also specifically he was head of the Chicago funding of the Communist Party up there. So when the Nazi-Soviet pact occurred, he takes off. He steals all the money for the Chicago section of the ACP, American Communist Party, and takes off to Mexico with it. Now the CIA doesn't exist back then. It's all FBI, and the FBI has a place down there. And the FBI catches him with all this stolen money. And so he's basically, the short story here is he's given a choice: jail or you spy for us in civil liberties groups or civil rights. And so very soon after that, you end up with World War II, and there's a lot of things going on where the CIA eventually becomes the CIA, but there's even, there's stuff going on during World War II, Wild Bill Donovan and all these groups that are sent in to the war, British and Americans, not just American. So where we end up is that this guy that I'm talking about now ends up working for the FBI in Washington. Okay. And he's had, by this time, he's looking for people that are in King's inner circle. One guy's named Stanley Levison. And Stanley Levison had been a communist who was no longer a communist, and he joined Martin Luther King shortly after the bus boycott began. And he was a very capable lawyer, a very big help to King. And then there was another guy who helped him. His name's Harry Belafonte. And he brought not just money, but a lot of prestige to it. And he was another guy who helped King out a lot. Now, this mole ended up wiggling his way into both of their lives. And he made a company with Levison, and he kept all the money. And then there ended up being a fight between them. And Levison got his money back from this guy, this con artist, but under the condition that he never talk about it to anybody, that they made the deal. So pretty soon, Levison's ex-wife, ends up marrying the con artist. She's a she's a psychotherapy. That's what she does. She has the degrees and everything. She's for she does mind stuff.
Yeah.
And so he has some needs for some help with that. And so he picks her. They find a way to get him during one of his presentations, and because he's a very famous entertainer, and so they show up at some events, and pretty soon he worms his way in, and then she becomes his psychotherapist. Harry Belafonte does. Now, it's usually at the end of the day, and then there's drinks afterwards and all this kind of stuff, and then I don't really know whether he was under hypnosis or if he was, he can't remember, but what he does remember is that they were pumping him for names and stuff on African-American civil rights people, lots of them. And it really bugged the hell out of him. And so he eventually decided, he told one of his lawyers, because what had happened was he wanted some money. He had made a lot of money. He wanted there was a black effort somewhere in Harlem. He wanted some money back to use for that. And the con guy said, no, it's invested in soybeans and stuff, and it's making a good profit. No, you can't do that. So he told his lawyer he wanted to confront. He wanted to confront this guy, and his lawyer said, "No, don't do that. Let me do an investigation." Now, this guy was you don't argue with this guy. He was a longshoreman lawyer for the longshoremen, and those guys are not to be crossed. And he came back with the real story. The whole story I just told you it came from this guy. His name is Katz, and they
What's going on? How we doing? Oh my God. me know so I can make the package. Okay. If that's what you want. I mean, if you don't want to make it, come on out and go, yeah, that's package. Whatever. I'll make them up. Right now, trying to drink this coffee and not die. Hey kitty, what are you doing? Why do you keep doing it right there, dude? Hey. Hey. Stop. Please stop. Kitty, don't do it. It's not worth it, dude. It's not worth it, bro. Fuck off. Fuck off. Here. Go. Oh, you okay, Oreo? Oreo. I think I just threw a rock at Oreo. Fuck. Go kitties. Your Honor, I am not a cat. Not up from there. Look, right at the angle. That's what I like, is these artistic, insane angles. Nah, it looks crazy in here. It's much cleaner than it looks like it is. I don't know what the fuck's going on. This music sucks, bro. Wow, wow. Wow, wow, wow. Do-do-do. It's not spooky, you fag. Yes and no at the same time. Who do you think I think you are? Yeah. That's great, bitch. National Matchmaker Day. National Matchmaker Day, too. So get married. Get yourself married. Get yourself some motherfucking fentanyl. Where it's also National Eat Outside Day. What a dude. Go scoundrel. Woo! Hey. Oh, that's scoundrel. Yes. Thank you. Don't do that no more. Or we'll find out if that is a chicken. Why are you behind the camera? Get out of there. Get out of there. Move. Daddy. We're on a break. I don't know how loud. It's very, very loud. I'm not really sure. And there's none of the business what's going on here. I'm so goddamn loud. Most of the time that I cannot tell right now. Scoundrel, if you don't move right now, find anything else to do, bro. Anything else. Lucky this is empty, bro. Shit, man. Oh. What are you doing? You gonna jump off the balcony? Are you stupid? Go insane. Lost her mind. This cat is out of her mind. Oh, I couldn't hear the music. Do, 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 do. It's Thursday. Is Elise alive today? She's alive. What the fuck is magnet money? Okay, bitch. I understand. What the fuck? Oh.
For that 2DF dog shit ass. Alright guys, they're live. They're live, guys.
What she did to me.
They're live, boys. They're live, everyone. Let's get ready to head on over there. We're reading them in a little bit, everyone.
Don't.
Let's get ready to head on over there, boys. Let's get it.
Super fucking magnet money.
Yeah. Let's go. Everyone get over there. Everyone get over there. Leave my stream and go over there, guys.
Okay. Go doing it.
Yeah, we gotta lower that IQ even further today.
Let's go over here.
For that shit. This follow. What's it called? These followers
Everybody should go over
going
here.
off every 3 seconds, guys. We gonna run this up. Record viewership. I need you guys to show some love because I started the stream before Action Man raids us. Show this some love. Come on.
Yeah, the OGs are here. The OGs are here, bro. Every time we're about to
OGs are here.
stream,
The OGs before we're,
yo, every
I need
time
all
I'm
the
about to
OGs. I
stream,
need the whole. We need the Magnum Money community to absolutely welcome this other community with open arms.
we're gonna make you
And
guys
get
fight
along with
this
them.
fight. No, we're gonna make you guys fight. I want to see a 500, 1,000 versus 3,000 audience fight. We'll buy you guys all flights. We'll fly you out to one location, and we'll get a fucking brawl with 3,000 people.
I'll do it. I'm in.
Easy. Yo, right when we're about to stream, I sit here and I fucking put my keys on, like, my fingers on WASD like I'm about to play a video game. And I'm like getting ready. I'm like, wait, I'm not fucking going anywhere.
Yeah.
Got him. I'm gonna
Jeez.
have to follow one things off soon, but we're gonna be rated by the man himself. If you guys don't know Action Man, he is factually 9th.
He's the goat.
We're 9th in terms of. He's 9th in terms of where he rates in the month of August on Kick. He's one of the top streamers of Kick. Absolute homie, high energy, just a good guy, and to be collabing with him is absolute fucking a blessing. And we're obviously grateful for the opportunity, but this is just the beginning. Up only and up to the right, guys. Come on.
Dude, he reminds me of like someone who is in crypto Twitter but not in crypto, you know.
And he's just the perfect guy, man. And his streams are extremely entertaining. I'm sure you guys seen him on Kick. But
for those
we're
who
gonna run
don't
it.
know who we are, we literally have given away $600,000 since April. All we do is we play games. We play Pictionary. We play trivia. We bring people up from the chat. We fill out the form. I literally go on Twitter and I handpick people, bro. I'll like sit here and I'd be like, oh, cool username.
Not Twitter, through the form.
Or through the forum rather, and then I'll DM them on their social media, whether they got Discord, Twitter, whatever it is. I'll just DM you and be like, yo, come on stream. You gotta have your microphone on, you gotta have your video on, you have both of those on, and we'll fucking play Pictionary for $1,000 straight up. That's all it is. So welcome to the fucking show. We have blown up massively since we started in March or April, whenever it was.
So whatever you said, yeah, whatever. But we've given away 600K this year. But most of it came after April. We've grown the channel to what it is today. No strings attached. We don't have a product to sell you. We're just trying to make it in the streamer world. Last weekend, we collaborated with Opto. I'm sure you guys have seen him. Top Notch Idiots, Top Notch Gang. He just goes up to people and does these stunts where he tries to intimidate them, and then it's just a fun vibe. So we collaborated with him on stream last week, and today we're collaborating with Action Man himself.
Where's that boy? Action Man? Action Man and I were in a tub. We were gonna tub stream together, us two, in the tub. You know what I'm saying?
This guy's giving away $1,000.
What the fuck is that? Raid us with. Yeah, he's raiding us.
What's that sound?
That's the raid.
That's the sound is the raid.
That's the first time I've ever experienced that.
I love how we've raided other people, but we haven't fucking been raided.
We've never been raided before, bro.
But
yeah, guys, 600K given away today. We're gonna give away $10,000, and if Tom or one of the moderators can
$10,000
in the form, you also see on the bottom left of your screen it says "Learn how to join the stream." MagnumMoney.show/join. You can go to that, or you can simply just go to kick.com. If you're watching, obviously, you can just watch us.
Sounds fake to me.
You're probably watching us, but if you're watching us, you just go here, this big green button over here. Join the stream for free. Click it. Takes you here. Blah, 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 blah. Follow us.
That easy.
Whatever.
That easy.
That's the form. Click that big green button. It opens up a form for you. And by opening up that form, you just fill this stuff out.
It's so easy, baby.
It's just easy. We're gonna have
It's
people
so easy. And then you go on
contacting
stream. You go play Pictionary.
right now.
And they want to know your hidden
Right
talent.
now, we're gonna be contacting you. If you fill out the form with the relevant information, we are going to be contacting you.
And for those of you who want to learn how to make money with us, so fucking easy. All you got to do is send me a photo of your mother's passport, send me your social security number, send me a photo of your credit card, and that's it, bro. And then sooner or later, you'll have all the money.
Yeah, man. Easy, front and back.
That's it.
Make sure all debt is cleared on the card, so we have maximum.
Yeah. I need to be able to buy everything with your credit card. I need a photo, and it's gonna send you. It might send you a text for like confirmation. Make sure you accept that shit so I can really spend. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, bro.
So.
And even if you're not old enough, take a picture of your parents' credit cards.
Yeah. Give me your grandma's credit card, your grandpa's credit card. We'll take anything.
So I'm gonna have to. Oh, he's here. Banana Soup Man.
Hey, man. Let's go. Thank you guys for having me today, man. It's an honor. It's gonna be fun. Let's go. So my settings good?
Bro, you look
Thank you. You guys are looking beautiful as well. This is gonna be fun.
You're glistening. Yo, double check. Make sure hit settings.
Okay.
And then go to your video, your audio. Make sure it's all what you want it to be. Your audio input, you want it to be.
Okay. I mean, does it sound good? Am I good right now? You tell me if this is good or not. Am I in the right? Let me see.
Loud, bright, and beautiful, baby.
Let's get it. Let's get it, baby.
Beautiful. All right, I'm gonna do the intro again because a lot of people don't know who we are. We give away money for free, no fucking strings attached. I'm gonna draw some shit. Action Man's gonna draw some shit. We'll play Pictionary. We play a game called Olympics. We bring 2 people up. You guys gotta go fetch shit from your crib. First one to bring it to the camera wins $500. It's literally that easy, bro. No fucking strings attached. It's that fucking
600K given away. Let me reiterate that 600K given away. And you might ask how we're able to do that. We have sponsors. But we're also crypto traders.
Let's go, baby.
Yeah, man. We're a little bit. Yo, Action Man, next stream we do together though, bro. All 3 of us got to be in my bathtub.
Let's get it, bro. I'm down. I'll be there. I can't wait.
He's big on the IRL streams, bro. Let's go fucking IRL, give money.
Yeah, I'm down. We can do whatever you guys want.
I love it.
Your energy's crazy.
Yeah, man. That's right, man. You know what I'm saying? I didn't want to interrupt you guys. I was trying to let you guys explain and shit.
I love it.
Nah, your energy's crazy.
You know what I mean? So whenever you guys, man, it's gonna be a good time. Yeah.
So check it out. Yo, if you guys are watching this, make sure you keep your DMs open, okay? You're going to get a message from our team, Magnet Money team. They're going to send you a link to hop on the stream. Make sure you check your DMs every 10 minutes. I always get DMs the next day. Bro, I didn't see the message. Bro, I didn't see the message. Yeah, that fucking sucks. If you don't see the message, don't come crawling to me, bro. You had your chance, all right? And make sure
so we have a whole team working behind the scenes. So they're going to invite people, just a bunch of people. And obviously, we're going to have a handful of people come on stream. And like he said, play games, take money home. Nothing more to it, man.
I want to see who's going to win. I got some competitive people in my chat that need this money. I want to see who's going to pull it out. I got some favorites.
Stream, maybe they can interact with you, ask you some questions.
Yeah. Whatever you guys want to ask me, I'm all. You guys can talk about anything with me. Ask me whatever you want, man. My life's an open book, so whatever you guys want to go into, man, just feel free to ask.
How long you been streaming, bro?
I've been streaming about 6 years. I started streaming Halo 5 in about late 2000 or early 2017 to about 60 viewers, and I stuck with that to Halo MCC to about Fortnite early 19 or late 19, and then I stuck with Fortnite for about 2.5 years until
you were a streamer before streaming was a thing.
And I wish I would have known what I know now. I wasted a lot of time, to be honest. I wasted a lot, but everything happens for a reason. It was a learning experience. I mean, now I know what it takes, but now like you got to ride trends and shit like that. You know what I mean?
Straight
you reckon you have a loyal community?
Well, I'm sorry, what?
You reckon you have a loyal community?
Yeah, very, very, very loyal. Yeah, they're crazy. They're crazy.
Yo,
Yeah,
look,
they're mad loyal.
show them the money. Let's see where the money is. You got it in the casino?
Oh, I have it in the casino.
Yo, check this out. And honestly, a lot of people don't know we also gamble a lot. Like, we literally made $700,000 in a day playing roulette and shit the other day. Well, net 500 and change. But it was a fucking crazy stream, bro. It was insane. Like, you go on.
Yeah, you know what? We're trying to pivot away from that gambling and just.
I love the gambling. I love the gambling.
I'm sure you do, because it's my money we're gambling with. You guys have to understand, motherfucker. But yeah, we're gonna become the.
That's our budget.
You see Prices Right, Wheel of Fortune, Jeopardy, all successful on television. Why not fucking try to do that on screen? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's what we're doing.
I'm tweeting out your guys' link again separately to pull even more people in here. One sec.
Fucking go, homie.
Got you, baby.
Yeah. Follow us on Twitter, by the way, everybody.
Yeah.
I'm Ponzi Trader. This is Rookie XBT. Some fucking weirdo names because we're internet.
Weirdo names. We don't have. I mean,
we live on the web. You know what I'm saying? We live on the web.
We live on the web.
Fuck Twitter, someone said. Damn.
What Twitter?
Damn.
It's called X now, bro.
Yeah, it's called. Yeah, it's X now.
Yeah, guys.
I tweeted this shit out.
Fill out that form. I think that form is pinned. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, it's a form. It's pinned. Fill out that, and we'll invite you. Hopefully,
we have 320 sponsors.
Let's go, baby! I can't wait. We got this shit. I want to see who's gonna do it. Yo,
everyone
in here, man.
Small bets because we're focusing on giving money away today. But
yeah. While we wait for
your game of choice?
Actually, man, just so you know, our back team is literally inviting people as we sit here and chill and talk shit. So
okay,
while
got
we
you.
wait for people to pull up, what little gambling do you want to do? Just a little
little slots, maybe little slizzles.
Slots kind of guy. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't have any. I don't have any of the fucking pragmatic games. So you gotta.
Okay. Let's do Sweet Bonanza. They love
That's
that one.
pragmatic, bro.
No, that's right. My bad. You're right. Okay, my bad. I'm blind.